Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz takes place in the feature fight of UFC 263, Adesanya versus Vettori 2 this weekend, and I'm a little bit weird about the entire situation, and I'm going to try and explain to you why. I'm really excited for Nate Diaz to compete again in MMA. We have not seen him since UFC 244. That was a very long time ago. It's his long-awaited return. I'm really looking forward to Nate Diaz returning, to fighting in general. I will really be excited whenever this fight is about to take place because Nate Diaz will be involved in this fight. In fact, I'm not even excited about Nate Diaz fighting. He doesn't even have to make it to the cage. I'll be excited by Nate Diaz's walkout music starting to play and the lights going dim, just because I'll be able to watch Nate Diaz walk out to a cage that he may or may not make it to. I don't need him to make it to the cage. I'll be excited regardless, just with Nate Diaz's presence under the UFC banner. One thing I'm not excited about is what's about to happen to Nate Diaz. I think he's going to get humiliated by Leon Edwards and destroyed every single second of the fight while it lasts. If you thought the Masvidal-Diaz fight was bad for Masvidal, I think Leon Edwards is going to do it better than Masvidal did, and I think he's going to actually finish Nate Diaz in this bout, because I think he's going to want to finish in this bout, because he knows, with Colby Covington being promised a title shot against Kamaru Usman, and Usman seeming not too interested in the Colby Covington rematch, if he goes out there and has a boring performance against Nate Diaz, he's definitely not going to get himself a title shot. But if he goes out there and finishes Nate Diaz in spectacular fashion, and then calls out Kamaru Usman on a microphone on a big pay-per-view at UFC 263, maybe, just maybe, Leon Edwards is going to secure himself a title shot here against Usman. He knows that's on the line, and I think he's going to go for the finish because of it, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen in this fight. Leon Edwards wants to finish, which means he is going to finish Nate Diaz, and I think he's going to do it with a body kick in the 4th round, or maybe the 3rd round. I'm undecided yet, but we'll get to that at the end of the video. I think Edwards is going to destroy him start to finish. I don't like this matchup for Nate Diaz. If I had to bring Nate Diaz back, I'd maybe look at a Carlos Condit fight, maybe a matchup with Robbie Lawler, maybe a matchup with Nico Price, or like some kind of matchup that makes some kind of sense where I could maybe see a chance of Nate Diaz winning. Jeff Neal, I think that's actually a decent matchup for Nate Diaz. I reckon he might have a chance of going out there and beating the current Jeff Neal, because Jeff Neal's been looking pretty bad recently. I don't see any chance of Nate Diaz beating Leon Edwards. Edwards is a nightmare style matchup for Nate Diaz, and I'm going to tell you why. And don't get me wrong, Logan Paul just won rounds against Floyd Mayweather, and I watched that happen. And I know we're in a bit of a dream world right now, but there is no way, other than the fact that this sport is entirely rigged, that Nate Diaz is going to find a way to beat Leon Edwards come this weekend. I think it's a terrible matchup. Where does Nate Diaz beat Leon Edwards in the fight? Where? Nate Diaz is not going to beat Leon Edwards on the outside at range in the striking department. That's just not going to happen. Leon Edwards is one of the rangiest fighters Nate Diaz has taken on. The last time Nate Diaz took on a guy who was as tall as him or taller than him was Rory McDonald in the welterweight division, and I feel like Leon Edwards is above that level right now, especially Rory back then. Don't get me wrong, I think Nate Diaz has evolved a bit as well, but I feel like he's de-evolving right now. I think there was a moment in Nate Diaz's career around the Michael Johnson first McGregor, second McGregor fight time, where he actually was a decent fighter. But even his comeback against Anthony Pettis broke his foot in that fight, and Nate Diaz did not look good in that fight against Anthony Pettis. Don't get me wrong, he won a fight against a guy who had just beaten Wonderboy Thompson. That's how the situation had played out around then anyway. It was a bit of a weird situation, but either way, Pettis had just beaten Wonderboy, and Nate Diaz came in and beat Pettis, so it looked really good for Nate Diaz. I didn't like the way he looked in that fight with Anthony Pettis. I think he slowed down, he gassed out more than he maybe usually would, he didn't look very technical on the feet, he tried to crowd Pettis against the cage and on the ground, which actually worked. I don't see him being able to implement that game plan against Leon Edwards. First of all, I don't see him beating him at range. We've already discussed that. I don't see that happening whatsoever. I definitely don't see him out-clinching Leon Edwards, because I would say, fairly confidently, that Leon Edwards has maybe the best clinch work in the entire UFC. I'm trying to think of other names, and other names maybe could hold someone against a cage and shoulder attack them or stomp on their feet, like Usman in that welterweight division. I don't know someone who can seriously fuck you up from the clinch the way that Leon Edwards can, other than maybe Piotr Yan in the bantamweight division, the way he lands shots off of the break with those elbows. I just don't see Leon Edwards losing this one. I don't think he's going to lose it in the grappling. I definitely do not see Nate Diaz being able to take down Leon Edwards and submit him on the ground in any way whatsoever. I think if Leon Edwards is going to get submitted in this fight, it's by him tiring out on the feet and then shooting a bad takedown himself and maybe getting guillotined or triangled or armbarred from Nate Diaz on bottom. I don't see Nate Diaz submitting Edwards. I don't see him ragdolling Edwards to the canvas. I don't see him winning the clinch exchanges. And not only do I not see him winning the clinch exchanges, I see him being destroyed in the clinch exchanges. And that's where Nate Diaz does a lot of his best work. In the clinch, wearing down opponents. Every time he does that with Leon Edwards, he's going to get his face sliced off. Everyone who engages in the clinch with Leon Edwards, RDA, had it happen to him. Gunnar Nelson shattered his orbital bone in a clinch exchange with Leon Edwards where they sort of started. Edwards made distance, cracked him with a shot over the top and put him down with a brutal elbow. You saw it against RDA. He had his massive eye sliced up all over the place from a fight with Leon Edwards. We've seen this in Leon Edwards' bouts. Maybe not against Belal Muhammad because it got cut short a little bit as well. But even still, Leon Edwards slices his opponents up disgustingly in fights with those elbows, and Nate Diaz might just have the most scar tissue. He might just have the most scar tissue out of anyone in the UFC, period. I mean, these are the Diaz brothers. Like, Nick Diaz, if you'll remember, had surgery to shave down his eyebrow bones to stop cuts happening on his face. These Diaz brothers slice up real easy, and Nate Diaz has had so many cuts on his face. In fact, his last fight got stopped to cuts, and he's taking on Leon Edwards, the slicer himself. I think Diaz is going to get really badly battered. On the feet at range, Leon Edwards will be stinging him with a 1-2 the entire night long. I think that's going to eventually start lifting up Nate Diaz's hands a little bit, and I think that's going to reveal the body kick for Leon Edwards, which he's going to slam into the stomach of Nate Diaz. And don't get me wrong, Nate Diaz is a tough guy, but he went down to a body kick against Jorge Masvidal, and I'll tell you this. Masvidal didn't finish Diaz because he was worried about gassing himself out. And Masvidal does gas out in fights. He's always had that problem. Leon Edwards, I think, is not going to have that problem. He can go 5 rounds hard. He knows how to control a pace as well. He's not one of these guys like Masvidal who's going to go swinging wild if he has you hurt and really go after you and use these massive explosive movements. Everything Leon Edwards does is very energy efficient. It's very slick. And I think people are going to be truly awakened as to how good Leon Edwards is, and also as to how bad this current version of Nate Diaz is as well. I don't see him coming back between the ages of 34 and 36, being 36 years of age, and taking on Leon Edwards after a long layoff and beating him. I'm just not saying that's going to happen at all in any way. I've never been more confident. Leon Edwards is going to... I'm sorry, Nate Diaz fans. I'm so sorry. You might have clicked on this video looking for a smidgen of hope. Just tell me, Guru. Tell me anything you possibly can. Maybe he can land an eye poke back on Leon Edwards. I don't know. I don't even see that happening. I think Edwards is going to just destroy him. And don't get me wrong, Nate Diaz is good. You know, he slaps people when he's losing fights, so it makes it a little bit more badass that he's losing because he's slapping them and he doesn't care, man. He doesn't care about losing. He's just there to punk people, man. I understand the Nate Diaz fan base. He's going to get really badly hurt. He's going to get really badly hurt by Leon Edwards. Really badly, man. I don't see it going well. I think he's going to finish him with a body kick in the 3rd or 4th round. I'll say, you know what, I'll say 4th round. A little bit safer than the 3rd. 3rd's a little bit early. Maybe Nate Diaz will still have some cardio to fight out of some situations at that point. I think he's going to get cracked to the body many times in this fight with that body kick from Leon Edwards that he hides behind the punches anyway. So he's going to start with those 1-2s. Then he's going to start feinting the 1-2 or feinting a jab and sliding that kick underneath it. That's what happened in the Belal Muhammad fight, actually, to end the fight. When he did eye poke Belal Muhammad, he actually started it by going for a kick to the body and sort of blinding Belal Muhammad with his lead hand. It wasn't supposed to be an eye poke. He had his fingers curved. It just hooked on the eye of Belal Muhammad. Very weird situation. I don't see it happening again. And I think he's going to badly torture Nate Diaz. I've seen Leon Edwards do it all to people. He can break people on the ground. He has a finish like that in the UFC. Leon Edwards has a really, really underrated recent resume in the UFC. He's beat some really, really good opponents. And I feel like He's just dismantled Nate Diaz. Look at these wins that he's had in a row. Dominic Waters, who really cares, but it was back in 2016. Albert Tumanov. That's a good win against Albert Tumanov, and he out-grappled him and submitted him in that fight. Tumanov, that name ends with a V. That means he lives on a cliff. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Craziness. Vicente Luque beats him by unanimous decision, schools him on the feet, and takes him down and out-grapples him as well in that fight. Peter Sabota beats him by KO in the 3rd round, batters him on the ground in that fight, and also does pretty well before then, and also pretty clearly wins the fight before getting the finish. Then beats Donald Cerrone by unanimous decision, shows he can go 5 rounds, which is another thing I don't like about this fight, because Edwards has got such good cardio, he can keep the pace and keep a very stable pace over 5 rounds. I don't see Nate Diaz being able to swarm Leon Edwards in the later rounds if he wasn't able to do it against Conor McGregor from 145, stepping up to 170 for the second time in his career. Am I making sense here? I don't see it happening. He also beat Donald Cerrone very clearly. The scorecards were a little bit strange. He also beat Gunnar Nelson very clearly. The scorecards were a little bit strange. He won the 1st and 2nd round against Gunnar Nelson and basically just threw away the 3rd round against Gunnar Nelson because he knew he'd won the first 2. Apparently one judge disagreed with him, but still, you could see he kind of just let Gunnar Nelson mount him in that 3rd round. He was just holding on. He knew Gunnar Nelson couldn't do anything and he'd won the first 2 rounds, obviously. Either way, moving on, beats Rafael dos Anjos over 5 rounds, and don't get me wrong, reasonably competitive, but again, it's only competitive because Edwards does enough to keep it competitive. In these rounds where RDA might be landing some good shots on Leon Edwards, Edwards is just keeping that little bit ahead of him. And that's why it's competitive. If RDA did a little bit more in that fight, some people would say, if RDA did a little bit more, he could overtake Edwards and beat him in some of those rounds. No, if RDA did a little bit more against Leon Edwards, Edwards would also do a little bit more and increase his lead and keep it the same the entire way through. He's a very smart fighter. He doesn't get emotional. He's also just shaken off the cobwebs from his long layoff against Belal Muhammad. But he basically got a free chance. Hey, Leon Edwards, we're going to match you up with a big fight against Nate Diaz. Here's Belal Muhammad. Go in there, take no damage, shake off the cobwebs, get back in the feel of things, and we'll put you back in there against Nate Diaz afterwards. He basically got a free tune-up that wasn't really a tune-up because he didn't get a win, but he also didn't take any damage whatsoever against Belal Muhammad. And now he's shaken off the cobwebs. He's not going to be rusty in the early round. And he didn't even look rusty in the early rounds against Belal Muhammad. Landed a brutal head kick and almost got a finish at one point against the cage. Didn't almost get a finish, but he had Belal Muhammad rocked and hurt in one moment in that fight in the first round. Looked like he was going to go on to do the same thing every single round, and Belal took it on short notice. So if he wasn't winning the early rounds, I doubt he would have came back later on. I just don't see Nate Diaz being able to do anything. And I think there's going to be no excuse from Nate Diaz fans. I think they're just going to have to accept, oh shit, Leon Edwards is the real deal. And also, oh shit, Nate Diaz should definitely retire from MMA. I think this is going to be a really bad performance from Nate Diaz. I don't see it being competitive. I could see him trying to lean in the clinch against Leon Edwards in the first round. Maybe makes it a little bit of a boring fight, but Leon Edwards will make the space with his arms, frame off the face, land his elbows, which will cut open Nate Diaz. That'll make Nate Diaz a little bit less likely to trade. Then Leon Edwards is going to start jabbing up Nate Diaz's eye from range and chopping at his legs. Leon Edwards can leg kick. Like, he can do everything that you need to do to beat Nate Diaz. And Nate Diaz can do things, but Edwards knows how to defend against all of it. Great grappling. Great jiu-jitsu. Never been tapped in his life. He's said that before. It's his famous quote. You know what I mean? Never tapped in my life. He's never tapped in his life. Never tapped in my life, Will. He's never tapped. He lets us know all the time. I don't see him losing. But Logan Paul just beat rounds, like 1 round against Floyd Mayweather. This whole world makes no fucking sense, man. Pissing me off. Really is pissing me off. Edwards will win. If he doesn't, I'll rob a bank. If Edwards doesn't win against Nate Diaz, I'll rob a bank. And you know what? I'll get away with it as well. I'll just somehow manage to maneuver between all of the police officers in the entirety of London. 100%. I'll rob the Bank of England. If Nate Diaz somehow manages to beat Leon Edwards, I'll rob the Bank of England. And you know what? I'll get away with it. I'll just narrowly pass through as the camera is turning. I'm moving out the way of it as it turns back around to catch me. Barely out of sight, just in time. It'll be perfect. Everything's going to work out perfectly. We're in a simulation. Nothing makes any fucking logical sense whatsoever. Leon Edwards is going to destroy Nate Diaz, and if he does win, and wins impressively, usually I wouldn't say give him a title shot, because if Wonderboy wins against Gilbert Burns, I feel like he deserves a title shot as well, but this is going to be big things for Leon Edwards. If he does win against Nate Diaz, I would maybe look for the Covington fight for him. And if Wonderboy beats Gilbert Burns, they're going to go with Wonderboy for the title shot. Apparently, they're doing Usman Covington too, according to Dana White. But I think Dana White should see if that is according to Usman, because Usman does not want the Covington rematch. Not because he's scared. He just wants a bit of an easier matchup against a guy that he can wrestle with and make them fear the takedown. He knows what he's good at, and he knows what his opponents can do against him in that division. I think he's going to try and avoid the Colby Covington fight, and maybe if Edwards wins and calls him out good enough and gets the finish that he needs, he might get the title shot. The UFC is all about momentum, and Colby Covington has not fought since August of last year, September of last year, something like that, maybe even July. I don't even know. I feel like they're just going to use momentum of Leon Edwards. If he does batter Nate Diaz, he's going to have a bunch of eyes on him. And he could steal the show if the main event is trash and maybe the co-main event is trash. I doubt that in either way, but either still, I think it's bad. Sorry, Nate Diaz fans. I'm done. I'm done with him. He's not going to win. He's vegan now as well, which just adds to the patheticness. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Leon Edwards, late third round, body kick TKO. He's landing shots upstairs on Nate Diaz. Diaz has his eye completely sliced open from the clinch exchanges that they've had. Maybe Edwards has taken down Nate Diaz at one point in the fight and started to beat him up on the ground a little bit as well. And then they get back up. Diaz is a little bit tired of being beaten up. Sliced open, blood dripping down his face. Edwards jabbing his mush off. Diaz starts to bring the hands up a little bit. Edwards cracks a brutal body kick underneath it, folds Diaz against the cage, and just follows up with ground and pound to a TKO finish on a shelled up Nate Diaz. Like and subscribe. I'll see you later. I'm sorry. It's just, this is the sport. He's going to die.